Hi and welcome to this week's video. In this week's video, get this top decking complete. Yay! Complete with the fuel filler section in there and the side covers all sorted out. So that's a lot of work out of the way. And as you might be able to see, started work on the headrest. So the situation currently, I have painted the inside of this top deck section, and we've got the ring finished, ready to go. So I'm just going to got them out of the fuel tank, and I've started playing with the headrest. Now each of these lines vertically is 25mm apart. You can sort of see though, I've extended them out the top and out the bottom. Here, there, whatever spacing it comes out at, whatever that spacing is, it's been transferred onto this piece of ply. So we've got the lines going straight back, parallel lines, but at the spacing that's worked out from that arc where those vertical lines are going down. And this will allow me to take an angle from the top here down to wherever it impacts on here, for whatever angle I decide for the center line going back for the headrest. From there I should be able to then plot a curve going around so that I could use a simple curved top section to make the headrest going back. Hopefully that will look quite reasonable. If not, I can adapt and modify it as necessary. I'm just sorting out these side covers. Just got to get this one down a little bit more up in the corner up here. There's something not quite there, and up here. But generally got the brass inserts in for the M3s along the bottom. These are just drilled to well, 3.2mm eighth for these skin pins, holding it in place. So I can put anchor nuts on, and I'll just show you the other side. So here's the other side with it fitted. I'm going to go around the edge of the panel, just bring it in a little bit to give some clearance for the covering, because there's going to be couple of layers of covering, layer on this, a layer on this, but then it's going to sit underneath. So I just need to go around the edge, just make it that little bit smaller. But overall, that's the fit for the access. I moved that screw up and that screw up from the equidistant points because I needed the anchor nut to be up slightly, because otherwise it's very close to the fuel tank top corner. So just needed a little bit of modification there. So I blanked off those holes, put in the resin with a bulking agent, wood flour. Okay, so there the anchor nuts in position. My method is I grab one of the anchor nut plates. These are floating anchor nuts, so I've bonded the floating section roughly central, and from there I'll then put a screw in from the wrong side. That way I can then stick it into one of the holes, drill the hole for one rivet, put a rivet through without forming it, drill the other hole for the other rivet, take it all out, open up the hole to 5mm, countersink the others, and then I harden the wood in this area with very thin Sino, very thin super glue. Rivet it all together, and there we are. That's the rivets in. They float around quite nicely. If I sort of show you one of the plates, you can sort of see that hopefully you can sort of see the plate here can move around quite a lot in various directions, so it self-aligns, which will allow me to put the panel on. These three are fixed, but they've got 4mm holes, so there's a little bit of wiggle room there, and then these can go as necessary, me what's happening with the covering. So there we go, that bit is now sorted. I'll put the cover on, make sure it sits flat, and sand it so it's flush, and make sure we've got clearance all the way around. And then I can put the fuel tank in again, and we can work on this little bit at the top here and get that done. And there we are, all in place, ready to go. Still needs a little bit of trimming around the edges, just to give that a little bit of clearance on this side, not too much. So I'm going to take the marked up where it needs to be, and I'm going to take these off now and get the fuel tank back in, so I can play around with the shiny bit made up in the last video. Well, there we go, that's the cap fitted. You can see there's a gap around the edge there for a grommet to go. But this sits down just as I want it, nice and low. It's a bit of a rattly old thread. There we go, it's in there. So that's it grippered, all the holes are drilled. This will just be held on with button head screws. There's not really enough metal thickness there to countersink it, and if I did, I'd have to put a doubler in on the ply if I was going to go for a dimple. So I'm just going to use mush head or button head screws on there. I've cut a 5-inch diameter hole here, which the stringer will actually cut the bottom off that hole, but I need to make the hole a reasonable size so that I can actually get my arm in through the hole, so I can actually deal with the rear mountings, the tailplane bolts, so I can actually get tools and bits and pieces in through there. Although the hole in the covering, the wood ring there, will be slightly smaller, just allows me just that little bit of extra space on this inner skin. The outer skin will be just a little bit further out, but the wood rings are smaller in diameter, unfortunately. But at least I've got a reasonable size hole to get things in and out. So the stringer line would be just taking that very bottom section off there. Nothing too mad. Down here I've got the T section for the headrest just curing up, and that will go, you'll see where that goes in a moment. T section just in position, just resting in position at the moment. That'll work quite admirably. The reason for the T is it allows me to keep a reasonable width at the top to bond the skin on and keep it relatively shallow, rather than just using a piece of sort of stringer form flat. It gives it a little bit of strength both ways while I'm manipulating everything. So next is a strip to go along the bottom, which will need to marry into the T for us to have the vertical fixing screw going into the top stringer. There's the sort of lower plate section, and you can sort of see I've created a bit of a wood joint there, and so this fits in quite nicely. So if I get that into position, there it is. There's a nice joint with the piece of wood at the top all the way, so that should be quite a nice strong joint. I can now work out where the hole's going to be, about here somewhere, for the hole going through for the mounting screw, because it needs to have a clearance so I can actually get the thing through and in, so it needs to be about there. I can now drill through this little one here on the center into the top of the upper stringer, through the ply, and that way we'll know exactly where the holes and things are. I can put doublers on either side of the stringer just in that area for the reinforcement to allow for the brass insert to be bonded in. So that'll set that sort of position. I'll bond this little bit up in a mo, and then we'll use a bevel gauge to get that angle there, and we can mark it all the way down, going from each of the points to get a position on here. The threaded insert, I've put these two pieces, as I said, on either side, and they're rounded over now so that they're pretty much in line with the next stringer. So when the covering goes on, I'll just do it on the centre line, but it's just gives a nice sort of little pad area there to put the strength in, because the 4mm insert is basically the same width as the stringer. It's cut down to about that height. So I can now put the top board back on in position, and we can crack on. So there's a bevel gauge, just taking that angle there off the centre line, going onto our top piece, and I can move that across, make sure it's central on the front face, vertical on the front face, and go back, taking a line from the bottom of the blade there to where it intercepts the line back there, and put a mark. I'll do that all the way around this side, and that'll be our curve. Then I'll move the vertical on that side, do the same on the other side. Then I'll take an average of the distance from the front to there, mark it, make sure I've got a nice fair curve, and we'll be playing quite nicely. And then it's going to be hot gluing probably one at every other point on one side, just to get a template for what the skin, half skin, would be like, so I can transfer that to a piece of ply. I've put the measurements down here I got from both sides and then averaged it. Same here, this was the one with the biggest error in it, and then very little error there. So we've got our sweeping curve. It's going to be 0 down here because that's where the headrest is. So now we'll just take this off. Now I've marked those, and do a fair curve with a piece of glass fibre rod to make sure it's a nice little sweeping curve. Well, there's the faired curve. There's the sort of corrections to the measurements, going from the averages all the way there, so we've got all those set up. Nice curve going around. The basic frame has been epoxied, and these two sort of sections here, they've just been hot glued, so they should be able to be removed relatively easily from the wood. That just gives me something to form around. I did change the rear section here slightly. I'm just making it slightly more tapered to the back end. Just a slight change in the shape, so it should still remain a relatively simple curve, but hopefully slightly more slender. Okay, so there's my cardboard template, quite rough and ready, out of a piece of thin corrugated cardboard. And then I transferred it to this 32nd ply, drew a centre line, flipped it over, and as you can sort of see, that fits quite nicely there. So next sort of section is I can remove the bits of wood which are hot glued in, clean up the inside of this ply with a bit of rough glass paper around the edges so that we get a nice glue joint. Hole which I bored there, which is of course the area I'm going to get into, put things into my headrest should I want to at some point. So I will I'll tack glue this to start off with a fast 5-minute epoxy or quarter-hour epoxy, and then I'll fill it inside there with T88 and glass fox after I've taped around the outside. Masking tape on, going around the edges, and if you can see inside, probably a bit dark, but I've actually put a resin fillet with bulking agent, the cotton flocks, in all the way around the edge there. So the next thing I've got to do is, once that's cured, is I'm going to cut the tape about, I don't know, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch above the seam line all the way around, remove the masking tape from the bottom, and then I'll put a fillet of bulked resin with wood flouring all the way along the edge there, just to make sure that there's no voids or anything. And then we can take this off once that's cured, cut the excess off here, and sand a nice little rounded corner all the way around. Before I do that bit though, I'll need to mark where the stringers go, the second stringers out, where they intercept the bottom, so that I can work out exactly where I'm going to drill a hole in the bottom of this and down into the top of the stringer. Well, that's it for this week. Front decking really sorted out now, nothing else to be really done there for the moment anyway. Headrest started, that's a big step made there, nice visual for you, and big hole in the back end for access. Not sure what we'll get up to next week, but I've got some plans, so hopefully you'll join me then. Thank you for watching, and keep yourselves fit and healthy. Bye now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.